Hello, everyone. People are still joining. We have 400 people on the call. Okay. We'll give everyone a minute to get into the Zoom, get into the meeting. If people want to rename themselves with their name and their area, it'll be really great to see where everyone is joining from today. And obviously, it's brilliant to see so many people join what is going to be a really important and exciting rally this evening. I'm just going to give it one more minute. It's great to see so many people from across the country in the chat today. We've got Eastbourne, we've got Norfolk, Islington, Nottingham, Newcastle. This is the type of movement we want. It is going to be made up of you, of women across the country, fighting back against the far right, fighting back against the racist division. Okay, well, without further ado, I think we should start. We have 500 people on the call tonight, and I want to give a massive welcome to everyone that's here, and also to the more that will be watching on Zoom, on YouTube. I think that it goes without saying that this rally, this Women Against the Far Right campaign launch, comes at such a critical time. We are seeing the far right running rampage across the country, mobilizing in our towns and cities, attacking refugees in their accommodation. We are witnessing the rise of a far-right racist party in the name of Reform UK, led by the country's biggest racist, sexist bigot, Nigel Farage. And we are seeing the dizzying rise of that party. And we are also witnessing a Labour government at such a dangerous time, parroting their racist agenda. This is all giving confidence to the far right on the streets. And all of this, the far right trying to mobilize and grow, is what they're saying is in the name of women's safety, in the name of stopping violence against women and girls. We think that this is despicable. The lies, the attacks on refugees, on Muslims, and on migrants, and the racism which is leading to these attacks on our streets. They say that this is how the far right want to tackle violence against women and girls. Well, I think that we've had enough. I think that we are calling out the bullshit. We're saying that it is not refugees that are making us unsafe. It is not refugees that are making our streets a danger to women and girls in this country. It is exactly the people who are on the far right. It is the sexists like Farage and Trump. It is the 40% of people who joined the far right riots last year who had previously been convicted for domestic violence. We're saying that nothing the far right does is in our name, and we are saying no more. And this is why I think we've put together this campaign that we are launching tonight to push back against the far right, to push back on the racist narratives and say that we can fight for ourselves as women, and that we know that the fight against racism, the fight against sexism and misogyny, and the fight against transphobia and all the other things that the far right uses to divide us, it is all connected. And we want to welcome refugees. We want to defend them against the far right. And we want to build an anti-racist movement that has women leading it, that says that we are not victims, that we won't stay silent, but actually that we are fighting back. And that is what this rally is about tonight. It is about launching that campaign around the country. It's about everyone here getting involved in that. And we're having a rally tonight which has such brilliant speakers to speak about all of this, such brilliant fighters to do that. So without further ado, I want to welcome our first speaker, someone who needs little introduction. That is Diane Abbott, MP, a stalwart, the first Black woman MP, someone who has received so much racist abuse in their lives themselves, but has never, ever stopped fighting and never let them get them down. Someone who will be joining us against the far right on Saturday, against Tommy Robinson, who's trying to bring out all those racist thugs onto the street. Please welcome Diane Abbott.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this important online rally and the launch of our campaign. And the first thing I want to say is how enraging it is to hear the fascists claim that they are defending our women and girls. And when they say our women and girls, they mean white women and girls, right? And they say this even though the most likely person to sexually assault you is a man you know. It's not an asylum seeker or anything like that. It's a man you know. And so they're peddling lies and peddling the lie that Black and brown men are the threat to women and girls. It's a very dangerous lie. In the 1950s in the United States, where that was a big claim, Black men got shot because of that. Now, we're not a gun-carrying society, but it's a dangerous line to peddle because it legitimizes violence against people of color. And we need to be clear. You see these fascists holding their little placards saying, oh, protect our women and girls. And it's, as I say, it's so bogus and it's so wrong. And we need to stand up to it. And, you know, a lot of my Labour Party colleagues are standing up to it, and many of them are here tonight. But sadly, the Labour Party leadership is not saying what it should say over and over again, that this might have been a bad incident here, but that doesn't mean to say that all asylum seekers are a threat to women. That may have been a bad incident last week, but that doesn't mean to say that all immigrants are a threat to women. So, I mean, I find that line in particular really enraging because it's really dishonest. And we need to look, I mean, I don't need to remind anyone here, but we need to remind ourselves what the right stands for. In addition to opposing and demonizing all migrants, all ethnic minorities, and many religious communities, they are also extremely hostile to women. Many of them oppose women's right to choose. The Farage is now against all measures aimed at stopping discrimination, including in the workplace. They're against equal pay, whether for women or Black and brown people, and they're actually in favour of sexual harassment and describe it as banter. But we learned from the police that these men who claim they are defending women and girls, 40% of the men arrested in the 2024 riots had previously been reported for domestic abuse. These are the men that are claiming to protect women and girls. These are the people who are claiming that they are defending women and girls against all Black and Asian men. It is truly disgusting. It's truly hypocritical, and we need to challenge it whenever we can. These are people that are not genuinely on the side of women. These are people that are using that narrative to justify their violence and their discrimination. So for all these reasons and many more, women must be in the vanguard of the fight against the far right. But fortunately, we're very much up to it. I have mentioned the far right's viciously anti-women practices, in addition to their cornerstone policies, which are anti-immigrant and racism. And when mainstream politicians say, oh yes, some of these people, they have understandable concerns. No, they don't have understandable concerns. They're just racist, actually. And if we don't call it out, the more we appear to echo Farage and Reform, the more they are reinforced and emboldened, and the worse the situation will get. We had an incident in my part of London just recently. It was a group of Chinese young women who had a football team, and they were in Islington Park just playing football. And these white men, these white racists came up to them. They were abusing them. They were kicking balls at them. They assaulted one of the girls. Now, what sort of society are we in where white racists think they can just assault young women? Fortunately, their community, when they heard about this, they rallied round and the police were obliged to send a policeman. So the next time they went to play football, some of them were frightened to do it, but they got that solidarity from the community and they went back the next time, and they're going forward. But this is where we are. People assaulting. These people talk about defended women. They're talking about people that will assault young women in the street, in the park, because fundamentally they're racist and they are misogynist. So we have to come together. We have to fight these racists. We have to call them out on their completely bogus pretense that they're interested in defending women and women's rights. We are at a very dangerous time. We're seeing the rise of racism and fascism all over Western Europe, but also we're seeing Trump, who is racist and authoritarian. And so we're in a very dangerous time. And it was never more important for all of us to come together, to stand up, to call out the racism for what it is. And standing up and calling out the racism includes women. And if anything, we should be at the front. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing the other speakers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diane, for that and for everything that you do. I just want to bring everyone's attention to the chat. There are some announcements going in there. The biggest one, I think, of which is that we have just announced that on the national demo against Tommy Robinson and the far right on Saturday, where we will get thousands of anti-racists out on the streets against, Tommy Robinson's free speech event, as he calls it, really just an excuse to spread racist division on our streets. We want as many women joining that demo as possible. And we are going to have a block which will be at the front of the demonstration behind a Women Against the Far Right banner. And we want hundreds of women to join that demo, be at the front of the demo to show what our movement is, and that we won't stand for people like Tommy Robinson, who is a fascist, who has brought so much violence against, women of colour and minorities, that we stand up against that. So I think that it will be really powerful if everyone can get to that demonstration on Saturday and join us at the front of the demo at 12 p.m. at Russell Square. Join our block. Let's be angry together. Let's make some noise. Let's show up against the far right. Okay, so without further ado, I want to invite our next speaker, who is another brilliant MP who has used her platform always to stand up for what's right, to stand up against racism. Someone who we also want to congratulate for challenging Starmer, and unfortunately not going to become the deputy leader of the Labour Party, but someone who'll do a much better job. Please do give it up for Belle Ribeiro-Addy.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak at this very important rally. It's so vital that we have this female-led movement, and it's standing up against the racist, bigoted far-right movement that is taking root in our country, not least because of the clear problems of violence against women and girls that plague members of the far-right, but also because they are marching in our name, or so they claim. The racist riots we saw spark up last summer was not just inspired by far-right hatred of migrants and non-white people, but allegedly it was because of the supposed risk that migrants and non-white people pose to women and girls. People were quite literally burning down hotels, housing asylum seekers to protect our women and our girls, as they were frequently heard saying. Likewise, most of those interviewed at the various far-right marches and anti-migrant protests taking place outside hotels this summer have said something along the lines of, we don't know who they are, and we're concerned about the safety of our women and girls. They're using the guise of protecting women and girls to justify their racism, their hatred, and their bigotry. But I don't recall the far right marching outside at the Met police station after a serving white police officer kidnapped, raped, and murdered Sarah Everard. In fact, I'd be hard pressed to name a single occasion where these self-proclaimed defenders of women's safety protested or even acknowledged the hundreds of incidents of white men committing acts of violence against women and girls. So it seems their concern is only for victims of violence against women and girls when the perpetrator is a person of colour or a migrant. And I don't know about you, but as a woman, and particularly as a woman of colour, I can tell you I feel a lot safer amongst refugees and migrants than I do amongst the far right. That's partly because I know when they talk about protecting women and girls, they're talking about protecting women and girls they are not talking about protecting women and girls who look like me, quite frankly. And in fact, many of them would not think twice about spouting vile misogynist abuse towards women and girls who look like me. And many of us know that from experience. So their concern for violence against women and girls seems to be quite narrow, almost as though it was never really about protecting women and girls in the first place. But we also know that this group of people have themselves a particular penchant of committing acts of violence against women and girls. We've seen the statistics around the number of those who participated in last summer's riots for domestic abuse and convictions. And we can't allow this group to co-opt the campaign to end violence against women and girls, particularly when they themselves are so disproportionately the perpetrators of it. And so it is this that we must call out as we counter their hateful and anti-migrant rhetoric. We can't allow them to use the matter of violence against women and girls, which has historically been overlooked by successive governments, to mask their true intentions, to sow division, to cause fear, and to ultimately see the mass removal of people who don't adhere to their racial ideals, whether they were born in the UK or not. So I'm pleased to be part of this movement countering this dangerous narrative from the far right. And I'm pleased to be standing alongside so many strong women as we do that. We will not let the far right co-opt this issue. They do not march in our name, and we will oppose them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Belle. Such powerful words. I'm going to go now to another MP who, again, uses their platform to fight back, a fighter themselves, a fighter for women, against Islamophobia, against racism, someone who spoke out against the far right, despicably trying to mobilise in Canary Wharf. Our next speaker is Apsana Begum MP.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute honour to follow the powerful contributions that we've just had, including from the anti-racist, socialist and feminist icon that is Diane Abbott, and join you along with my incredibly brave friend, Belle Ribeiro-Addy, and also in the room with Shami Chakrabarti. I highlight this because over months and years, we have seen the political and media class complicit in the normalization of Islamophobic and anti-migrant rhetoric. And these people that I've just mentioned have led the charge against that normalization. Politicians inciting racism are putting all of us at risk, with the far right organising, including targeting East London more and more. As women who have long been campaigning on the serious issue of violence against women and girls, we know that it's not Muslims or migrants responsible for the endemic of male violence. We know that minorities cannot continue to be scapegoated for political and economic failings. And we know that it is people with power and wealth like Nigel Farage that are amplifying far-right theories. And we say loud and clear, we will not allow politicians of any party to allow any of our diverse communities to be scapegoated. To those who say that infrastructure is overwhelmed and the UK can no longer accommodate, we say that we know that this is because of years of underfunding of services, cuts and austerity. To those who say that asylum seekers are taking jobs, benefits and housing, we point out that asylum seekers are subject to the no recourse to public funds. They do not have the right to work. They cannot access social housing. They cannot even claim benefits. And to those that say that the biggest risk of gender-based violence is coming from migrants, Muslims and minorities, we say this. It doesn't. It doesn't come from strangers, but it comes more from current or former partners. Unfounded claims and the reinforcement of damaging myths will only undermine genuine concerns around women's safety. And the hijacking of the serious work to eliminate violence against women and girls in the UK and globally will only harm this. Let's not forget this. Many women seeking asylum in the UK are also survivors of gender-based violence. And let's be clear, persecuting refugees and having the anti-migrant scaremongering widen as it is does not benefit the majority of people in the UK. It does nothing to address the cost of living crisis, and traumatizing already traumatized people will not fund the NHS or increase wages or solve the housing crisis. Persecuting the already persecuted will have no impact on household bills or on child poverty. But the cynical and dangerous use of scapegoating to divide people by unpopular policies which continue to inflict hardship and suffering across our country does and will damage our communities. But we are here. And we are here today after bearing witness to the alarming rise in violence and intimidation organised by the far right against refugees and refugee accommodation. We are diverse, multicultural, multiracial, of all faiths and none, and from all over the country. And we have a proud and long history in the UK of being a sanctuary for people fleeing war and persecution, seeking work, or simply looking for a new start. And we've done this for many, many years. And we also have a proud history of standing up to intolerance, hatred, and division. Our traditions teach us that hardships can be overcome, and they can be overcome collectively. That's why through Women Against the Far Right, we stand up together against the racist diversion, and we will stand up for each other. Together we say to those who seek to divide society with their fear and intolerance, not on our streets, not in our communities, not anywhere. Solidarity.
Solidarity, Apsana. Thank you so much. I think it's so important to remember when things can look bleak and terrifying that we have such a proud history in this country of coming out together in our unity, in our solidarity, and pushing back the far right. And I think that's what we're going to have to do going forward in all of our areas, and starting with on Saturday against Tommy Robinson and the far right. I just want to comment on some of the stuff I've seen in the chat. We've got I've just seen that there's a councillor, Laura from Falkirk, who's put a message in about the situation in Falkirk, which is a scary one. But I think it's I just wanted to talk about what happened in Falkirk the other day, where people, anti-racists, have been out against the far right on a number of occasions, defending a refugee hotel there, because I think it shows what this movement can do, where at the last protest, there was a line of women that linked arms, that formed a line of defense physically, but I think also, you know, very powerful image wise outside that refugee hotel. And that since we've launched this statement that, you know, 8,000 people have signed around the country, and this meeting tonight, there have been demonstrations across the country against the far right, which have been led by women in that way. And I think that's what we want to do going forward. So I just want to bring in our next speaker. Our next speaker is an economist, a journalist, and an author, someone who is so clear and such a powerhouse, I think, in what, you know, they always tell us is a man's field of economics, someone who is so good at countering, you know, the right wing and centrist economists. I'm very pleased to welcome Grace Blakeley.
Thanks so much, Samira. And wow, thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on a panel with so many incredible women. what I want to talk about today is the fact that we live in a society full of a lot of angry young men being radicalized by the far right. We also live in a society in which power and wealth are concentrated at the very top. And to understand how these things are really linked and how to fight back, we have to understand the history of the emergence of fascism in the past. So we're living through a period of economic stagnation. After the financial crisis, we experienced the longest period of wage stagnation in the UK in modern history. Then we had the pandemic, then the cost of living crisis. Today, a record 26% of people in the country say they are struggling to live on their current incomes. In the past, we wouldn't have taken these challenges lying down. People would have come together and organized to make their lives better. 50 years ago, if you couldn't afford to make ends meet, you'd go into work, talk to your co-workers, ask them if they were having the same problem, then you'd organize and you'd just demand higher wages from your boss. And if they didn't give in, you would go on strike. But today, you are much more likely to blame yourself than your boss. Maybe you will take out a high interest payday loan. Maybe you'll just try and hustle harder. What has changed? It's not just that our economy has stagnated, it's that this stagnation has taken place in the wake of an incredibly successful political project to convince us that we are all alone, we have to compete to survive, and no one is going to help us if we fail. That project was, of course, neoliberalism. Thatcher said there's no such thing as society, but she also said the method is economics, the object is to change the soul. She wasn't just saying there is no society, she was saying she wants to destroy society, to tear apart the bonds that keep us together. And she did so really successfully by destroying the labor movement, social movements, privatization, to try and stop making us identify as workers who struggle together to fight for their interests and start identifying as mini capitalists who have to compete against each other. She also really successfully started to dismantle the welfare state, a project continued by New Labour to stop lazy workers leeching off benefits. And this ideology was critical in creating a market society where we believe that those who fail are losers and those who succeed deserve to be at the top. Such a society has no room for solidarity, for collective power, for mutual aid, only ruthless competition, hustling, and grinding. Fast forward to today, and we have a society of increasingly poor people who have learned to believe that poor people are losers who don't work hard enough. We blame ourselves for the structural failings of an economy built to support the rich. And without powerful movements to represent us, this self-blame changes into a profound sense of powerlessness. And there are two ways that people can respond to this powerlessness, and those two ways are gendered. One is despair. And this will be, you'll often see this more among women who will just say, politics isn't for me, and just disengage. The other is rage. And the latter is much more likely to be seen among young men, particularly on the far right. Because historically, these angry young men who feel politically disenfranchised and economically disadvantaged have formed the basis for fascism. Right-wing strongmen have responded to their feelings of powerlessness by encouraging them to project their agency onto strong leaders who can make them feel powerful again and project their rage away from those on the top who are causing their suffering and onto the most vulnerable. Just take Mussolini. Mussolini used the fasces, that is where the word fascism comes from, as the symbol of his movement. This was an ancient Roman weapon formed by tying together a bunch of sticks with an axe in the center. The symbolism was really clear. One stick on its own can break, but a bundle is unbreakable, and it can be used to attack your enemies. Now, Mussolini, not coincidentally, was a former socialist, and this is a similar imagery to that which was used by the trade union movement, where one finger is easy to break, but a raised fist is impossible. But fascism makes people feel powerful not by taking on the strong who are actually exploiting them, like the labor movement, but by encouraging them to attack those they consider weak. Instead of fighting back against a fundamentally broken system, fascists will retain a capitalist economic model that benefits the rich at the expense of workers, while encouraging people to redirect their rage onto those they consider weak. We see this in the violent behavior that many of these men exhibit towards their wives and women more generally. But to make this strategy really effective, they have to turn those who are the subject of their violence into a threat, so they can portray themselves as brave defenders. We see this with the claims that the far right is defending women against refugees, the way they portray trans people as a threat to women, the way they portray the left as a threat to democracy. This allows them to attack and reclaim their agency. Of course, not everyone responds to these feelings of powerlessness in this way, but the more helpless people feel, the easier it is for the far right to recruit them with simplistic, emotive narratives about taking back control. We cannot fight movements like this by accepting their terms of debate. We have to go back to the root cause. Why do these people feel so powerless? Why does everyone feel so powerless? Why is it so hard to fight back against an economic system that is causing so much damage for so many people? Because we live in an economy owned and run by the rich, who have bought off our political class and destroyed the foundations for working class power. If we are to fight back against the far right, there is only one option. Take on the rich and their political allies and build back the power of working people. That means starting in the labour movement, in community unions that can organise people to fight back against exploitative landlords and local politicians trying to close public services, in a range of all these social movements that allow people to channel their anger into positive change. Because at the end of the day, it's not enough to fight the far right. We have to show that there is another option, that the only way that people will ever feel powerful again in an economic system that is designed to crush them is to come together in their communities, in their workplaces, on the streets, and take on the people who are really in charge, the billionaires and the politicians in their pockets. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Grace. I think that is, so important that, unfortunately, that we know our enemy and we know how they're trying to build, because we need to build against them. And I just want to announce that obviously people can see how many we've got, over 600 people on the call tonight, and with the people watching live as well, that's almost 1,000 people who are partaking in this brilliant rally this evening. I think that is such a basis for us going forward to build the kind of movement we need. And just to say that obviously there's a lot going on in the chat, but maybe someone could just post it again right now. There is a form going around that we want everyone to fill in to get involved with the campaign, to tell us how you can help, to give us suggestions. This is all of our campaign. We want to launch in a big way with gigs around the country, with events, with posters, with badges, with Women Against the Far Right, materials that everyone can use. We want to have, in-person events. We're going to go for something big in London. We want people to organise local statements like the big one we did in every area. And we want as many people involved, basically, to make this movement as big as possible. So please do fill out that form, offer up what you can do to help out, and, suggest where we should go next with the campaign. Obviously, we're just at the start of it. Okay, so I want to invite our next speaker. Our next speaker is someone I'm so honoured to have on the call tonight. That is one of the country's leading human rights lawyers, the former director of Liberty, someone who is a lifelong campaigner against racism, sexism and misogyny, and has done so much in all of their work to advocate for refugees and asylum seekers and for women's rights. So please do give it up. Well, I keep saying please do give it up because I'm used to people being able to respond, but please do welcome Shami Chakrabarti.
Thank you so much, Samira, especially for the privilege of being able to follow Diane, Belle, Apsana and Grace. And I look forward to hearing subsequent speakers too. As you have heard, these women are fabulous advocates with fabulous values, but also great and hardworking campaigners over many years. And you notice the intergenerational nature of this campaign, which is particularly important and exciting to me. Secondly, I want to give a big shout out to Samira and Stand Up to Racism for the work. Now, the work has been conducted for many years, but particularly over the last year and a bit. So since those terrible race riots in the summer of 2024, shortly after the change of government, and onwards from then, I think that Stand Up to Racism have been extraordinary, and I know that more extraordinary things will come. And in particular, Samira, if I may say so, I think the letter, very carefully and beautifully drafted letter, dealing with this issue of the lies about versus women versus refugees. It was an exquisite letter. It got great coverage. And as with this online rally this evening, you see the techniques of combining traditional campaigning methods, including on-street demonstrations and counter demonstrations, with the use of modern media, social media, letters, and so on. And I'm sure, listening to you, Samira, I know that you have more plans, more ambitious plans, and I know that we all want to get behind you and support such an important campaign. As we've heard from those who spoke before me, it smells a little bit like the 1930s right now, doesn't it? And as in the past, sometimes that means brave people taking to the streets in very difficult circumstances, but in solidarity with each other. That's where the safety will come. That is where the protection for the most vulnerable will come. But it's also important. It's also important that there are moments of celebration. There are rallies, there are concerts, there are moments of celebration as well, because a movement needs both. It needs to be brave, but it also needs to be positive and optimistic. And Samira, the way you're chairing this meeting, the way you're steering the campaign makes me optimistic, even in some very scary, dangerous times. And I am so proud of this new generation of campaigners. I know Diane, who we've all looked up to. I've certainly looked up to, like a big sister for all my adult life. I know that older people who are a bit older, like Diane and me, take great heart and inspiration from the new generation of campaigners. And of course, we're all particularly proud this week of our dear Belle Ribeiro-Addy, who has fought such a wonderful campaign in the truncated process of just a few days. She changed the flavour of the Labour deputy leadership debate with her clear, uncompromising values and her articulacy and just the tone with which she has spoken. So proud of Belle. Just as I'm so proud of how you're orchestrating and guiding this campaign, Samira. I think that a 21st century anti-racist campaign has to be a human rights campaign. And of course, human rights are indivisible. And this, as we've heard from Grace in particular, but others in general, the fascist message is all about divide and rule. And so we have to unite and represent, in contrast with that division that attempts to throw different vulnerable groups of people under the bus, whilst the super wealthy on their Learjets just laugh at us because they will always do deals with the fascists in order to protect their wealth and power. So our message has to be one of unity and hope and inspiration, but we do need to protect fundamental rights and freedoms. And you will have all noticed in recent days and weeks and months, not just the anti-refugee rhetoric, but the anti-human rights rhetoric. And some voices, I'm ashamed to say, even some in the Labour Party, talking about, for example, pulling out of human rights treaties like, crucially, the European Convention on Human Rights. So I hope that in this 21st century anti-racist campaign and message, we will always be uncompromising about protecting fundamental rights and freedoms, not least because we all need them if we are going to be safe on the streets. and in the police station if it comes to it, and everywhere else. And I might add that the Convention on Human Rights has been particularly valuable, in the UK at least, in the defence of women, particularly women who've been subject to domestic violence, particularly victims of crime, women victims of crime in general, who had very, very few rights traditionally under common law, and really needed their rights under the convention. Rights against degradation under Article 3, and other precious rights and freedoms. And we, of course, also need the convention to protect the right to protest. And of course, that is under threat. Samira and others actually mentioned the way that the far right seem to have appropriated the language of free speech. Let's be clear, free speech, like other rights and freedoms, is supposed to be a two-way street. And this is where their hypocrisy is particularly apparent, because they don't defend the free speech of people to protest against the climate catastrophe or against the atrocities that are currently perpetrated in Gaza. It's their own hateful speech that they care about. So, you know, it's the old, my speech is free and yours is a little more expensive. So they're for their own liberties, the rights of freeborn Englishmen, but not for human rights for everyone. So it's particularly important that this campaign is a human rights campaign. And I know that in your hands, Samira, and in the hands of everyone on this call and everybody who will watch it now and later, I know that this is going to be an integrated human rights campaign. And I so look forward to working with all of you. Yes, these are difficult times, but the hope, the inspiration, and the ultimate success will come from solidarity. So thank you all, and solidarity, sisters.
Thank you, Shami. I am very much looking forward to working with you and everyone else. And I'm also very thankful for the kind words. I think that, you know, Shami spoke about it as well. Our movement is also about culture. And it is so important that we have, you know, the artists that have spoke out on the statement with us, and that going forward, we need a cultural movement against the far right as well. So that's why I'm really honoured to bring in our next speakers, who are a brilliant rock duo, Nova Twins, who have just released a new album. So we are very thankful that from what I'm sure is a very busy schedule, they're joining us this evening. They obviously are not just great music, which they are, so I'd urge everyone to listen to the album, but they also have a great message, and also always use their platform to speak out. They're great friends of Love Music Hate Racism and spoke out with us against the riots last summer. So I'm really honoured to have Amy and Georgia from Nova Twins with us here tonight.
Thanks so much for having us.
Hi everyone, and we are literally so honoured to be just amongst so many great women. This is incredible. I guess we've been invited here to just to share our experiences
In music.
in music.
Music.
So we just thought we'd share that and just to put it out there. So we've written a little bit. So I'm no stranger to outright racism, but it's the unchecked microaggressions that seep into our communities and shape our everyday lives. As a band, we just wanted to share a few of our experiences. Being two Black women in rock has been challenging to navigate. We were constantly told we didn't belong in the genre, whether it was A&R and label executives saying they didn't know how to market us because we didn't look like riot girls such as Debbie Harry or Bikini Kill, being told we should make hip hop or R&B instead of rock music. For our white male counterparts, it's never been a problem to exist anywhere. They make up the majority of the festival bills, often with multiple bands that sound the same and dominate wherever they choose. While white women in rock face sexism, the Black woman's experience is different. Systemic racism leaves us with fewer options and therefore fewer opportunities. We're not propelled in the same way, and we found ourselves working twice as hard and twice as long than our peers. When we express ourselves on stage with the same raw energy as Dave Grohl or any other male rock legend, we're called aggressive. I've been told I'm scary so many times after performing, while a male rock band gets high fives and is hailed as gods. What people really mean is that seeing a darker skinned woman perform that kind of way, makes them uncomfortable. Their unconscious bias recycling the stereotypes society and media have forced on us. Mainstream media constantly hypersexualizes Black women, and while we celebrate sexual freedom, it needs to be on our terms, not because it feels like that's the only option for us to succeed. Through relentless determination and support from friends and family, we created our own lane to exist. We want the next generation of young girls to grow up knowing that their dreams and hard work have no limits, that neither race nor gender should ever determine how far they can go.
In lockdown, we launched a platform called Voices for the Unheard and started speaking to lots of POC alternative artists around the time of BLM about their experiences in the industry, and they were all alarmingly similar to each other. They shared feelings of being typecasted and pigeonholed, gatekeepers unable to understand what genre they were in, even though they were thrashing out gnarly riffs and screaming down the mic. One artist said their label declared that they couldn't have a Black man be their love interest in a music video as they thought it wouldn't perform as well. While a white indie band confessed to us that their management didn't want us to open for them on tour, you'll be happy to know they kicked back and we joined them on the road regardless. This is why we wanted to write an open letter to the MOBO Awards, which is an award show celebrating music of Black origin, demanding the need for an alt-rock category. The MOBO Awards is such a key award show as it targets the mainstream audience and is popular with young people. We wanted to create the alt-rock category so Black people can take ownership and claim back the rock genre and feel proud of rock, just as they are with hip-hop, grime, and R&B. It was originated by the queen of rock and roll, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, after all. Black people has been erased from history in all avenues, whether it's stolen inventions, historic paintings being altered and whitewashed, to rock and roll music being diluted from its original roots and not being allowed to play on the radio. It's so ingrained into our society and has gone on for too long that the majority of youth today haven't been taught their true history, that our history doesn't start from slavery. We were kings and queens, rock stars, and inventors. We've seen a major shift in the underground punk scene with more Black musicians claiming their space. It's time for a rock and roll revolution, and we're ready for the uprise. The rise of the far-right rhetoric is alarming and hard to ignore. It's happening online, in politics, and in our communities. It can feel overwhelming, like the problem is too big to tackle, but change doesn't always start on a big scale. It begins in our own communities. That can mean uplifting those around you, creating safe spaces, or challenging hate when you see it. No action is too small. We all have the power to refuse to be divided. And when women stand together, we can push back against the far right. Together, we can stamp out the hate. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Want to put on a concert?
You're way
Yes.
Okay.
Women Against the Far Right, rock and roll, punk gig coming. The MOBO Awards won't know what hit them. Thank you so much. I mean, your words were so brilliant there, and I'm sure it's inspired a lot of us, and lots of people resonated with that. And yes, we will hold you to a big gig to piss off the racists and the far and the sexist.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. And yeah, what a brilliant speech there. So amazing, and such energy, and the kind of thing that we need. If there's one thing that the far right, Nigel Farage, Tommy Robinson don't have, it is culture, or any kind of taste musically or culturally in anything. So we have the people with us. Okay, I want to go and hand over to our next speaker. Our next speaker is another brilliant, dedicated fighter against racism and the far right, someone who I'm sure people have seen, and if they've ever been on a protest against racism or the far right, that is Sabby Dhalu, who's also the co-convener of Stand Up to Racism, which has been part of initiating this brilliant campaign. So please give it up for Sabby.
Thank you so much to Samira. And how do you follow the Nova twins? What an amazing speech. Keep doing what you're doing. And I too look forward to the Rock Against Racism, Love Music, Hate Racism concert headlined by the Nova twins. Thank you also to our other speakers, the wonderful Shami Chakrabarti, Grace Blakeley, and a particular thank you to our MPs, Diane Abbott MP, Apsana Begum MP, and Bell Ribeiro-Addy MP. And the reason why I want to give a particular shout out to the MPs is because I know a lot of MPs are receiving a lot of threats and attacks and all sorts of abuse. And we remember that MPs have been violently attacked. We remember the murder of Jo Cox MP 9 years ago. She was a white woman MP who stood up for refugee rights, stood up for minority communities, Muslim communities in her constituency, and she was murdered by a white man on the far right. So thank you to our MPs. A particular shout out to Diane Abbott for her unwavering support and strength in fighting racism and defending immigration and asylum rights when many have been afraid to speak out, despite all of the enormous abuse and disproportionate abuse that she gets, because a lot of the abuse targeted at MPs, a huge proportion has been directed at Diane Abbott MP. So thank you to Diane Abbott for all you do. And I do hope that the Labour Party bring back Diane into the Labour Party, and I don't agree with her suspension. And secondly, Apsana Begum for bravely speaking out against domestic violence in Parliament and speaking about her own experience. It takes tremendous courage to do that. Thank you to Apsana Begum. And finally, to Bell Ribeiro-Addy MP, as many have said, for standing in the contest for the deputy leadership of the Labour Party to defend the interests of the working class, including women, Black, disabled, LGBT plus people, faith communities that are discriminated against, and to stand up for the many and not the few. It will be a travesty if Bell Ribeiro-Addy MP is not on the ballot paper. So solidarity and good luck to Bell Ribeiro-Addy MP. Secondly, I want to point to the hypocrisy and double standards of the far right. So obviously, as we've seen over the summer, the far right demonstrations targeted at hotels accommodating asylum seekers. The cutting edge of that has been this racist myth that asylum seekers or foreign nationals or African, Caribbean, Asian communities are disproportionately responsible for sexual assaults and sexual abuse. But these are the people that stand in the tradition of Hitler's Nazis, who believe the role of women should be confined to the kitchen, church, and children. And many on the far right have convictions for sexual assault, grooming, rape, and paedophilia. So recently, Stand Up to Racism activists exposed that far right activist. Let me grab his name for you, because we don't want to get this wrong, do we? But anyway, while I get his name, he has convictions for paedophilia, committing crimes against a young white girl that was related to him. And this is someone who has been attending recent far-right protests outside hotels in the name of defending women, whilst having a conviction himself for paedophilia, for committing crimes against a young girl who was related to him. So I will find his name in a moment because I don't want to waste time. I will carry on. I also urge you to follow the work of feminist and Stand Up to Racism activist Dr. Louise Raw, who is a survivor of rape and child sexual abuse. Louise and a woman called Caitlin set up a group called Survivors Against Fascism. Now, Caitlin is someone who was actually groomed, and after she escaped years of grooming, met a group of chaps who said they were here to smash grooming gangs, and said that they were here to help people like her, and that they were going to raise money to help her and get counselling. And she thought, okay, fair enough. But then she started to hear Islamophobic comments and told them that she thought that they were racist. She was terrified
But she still had the guts to say to them, you will not use my story for your racist ends. I have been abused by people of all demographics, right? This is not a Muslim thing. I've been abused by white people. Do not use my suffering and pain for your ends. Now, what did they say then? The so-called defenders of women who were caring for women survivors of grooming, they said, kill yourself, you should kill yourself. So these are the people that claim to be defending women. They do not defend women. They are racist, they are Islamophobes, they are fascists, and they are sexist and bigots. Dr. Louise Raw has also done a lot of work exposing many, many men on the far right that have convictions against women for rape, sexual abuse, assault, and exploitation. And then thirdly, I just want to make the point that portraying refugee men, Pakistani men, Muslim men, or African, Caribbean, and Asian men as uniquely responsible for sexual abuse, exploitation, and assault is racism. And this racism undermines the struggle for the liberation of all women and undermines the eradication of these horrific crimes. So ultimately, this does not help women. It actually hinders the struggle against sexism and misogyny and the liberation of all women. So finally, Stand Up to Racism stands for justice for all women, regardless of ethnicity and nationality of the perpetrators, and regardless of ethnicity and nationality of the victims. And Stand Up to Racism believes we must mobilise against this scourge of racism and fascism. So please join us on Saturday against Tommy Robinson's Festival of Hate, which will be a festival of sexists and bigots, homophobes and racists and fascists. Please do join us. It's important that we take a stand against racism. We know that racist attacks and sexism, misogyny, all sorts of horrific crimes increase when the far right take to the streets. So it's important to stand up to that. Thank you, and solidarity.
Thank you, Sabby. Just to echo that, please do march with us on Saturday. We'll be meeting at 12 p.m. at Russell Square. You'll see us. We'll be behind the Women Against the Far Right banner at the front of the demonstration. Bring your friends, bring your family, join that demo. Let's build the movement together. Okay, I'm looking at the time. We want to finish by 7 p.m. So I'm going to bring in our next speaker, who is Sarah Kilpatrick. Sarah Kilpatrick is the president of the National Education Union and a teacher, and someone who themselves is such a brilliant fighter, but I think is so important as the people who are educating and doing so much to safeguard the futures and children across this country. To have her speaking here tonight is brilliant. So please do give it up for Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much, Samira. Can you guys hear me? Perfect. I had a meeting earlier today and the microphone on this did not work, so I had a slight panic about tonight. So yeah, I'm Sarah. Thanks so much for the introduction, Samira. I'm an art teacher in the northeast of England. I've been teaching for about 20 years, and as Samira said, I'm currently the president of the National Education Union. The NEU has 500,000 members, and almost 80% of them are women. So as you can guess, it's been on our agenda for quite a long time to tackle sexism, misogyny in our schools, in our workplaces, our colleges. And this has been something that we've been doing for quite a long time. So in 2017, we published a report called "It's Just Everywhere," which was a quote from a child who sort of dismissed the sexism that she faced because, well, it's just everywhere. It was so normalized to her. And that was evidenced throughout the report that was published. That led to a really important piece of work that was done by our union. And it was done by lay activists in our union. It's a real strength of the NEU that we have such strong grassroots activism. That was It's Not Okay. And it's a toolkit that's used in schools and colleges all over the country. And it's implemented by people who are working in schools and colleges. And it is to engage children, staff, the senior leadership, and crucially, the wider community in tackling sexism and misogyny. Grace mentioned something earlier about sort of the death of the trade union movement, the very purposeful destruction of society. And nowhere is that more evidenced than in the purposeful destruction of working class education. It's the end point of the Thatcher project. There is no proper education anymore for impoverished children. There is no time in the school day to teach critical thinking skills. There is no time in the school day for children to ask questions of the adults that they trust. This is ideological, it is purposeful, and it has led directly to the issues that we all see now. I did say I've been a teacher in the Northeast for a very long time. I've worked predominantly in very working class areas with huge majority white children. And I can tell you the unhappiness is tangible. The lack of hope, the lack of optimism is tangible. And it leads children to really unpleasant places. This proliferation of horrible online influencers, the likes of which I probably don't need to name, but I will. Andrew Tate. There are many like him. He's not the only one. There has been a drive from influencers like him to steal our children's imaginations from us, to take away the sense of despair. And what it's replaced with is this suggestion that you too can have this amazing life. You can have 20 Lamborghinis and beautiful women. You just have to understand that women need to know their place. You have to understand that your opportunities are being stolen from you by these people coming here on small boats. It's a lie, but it's a lie that has taken hold in such an enormous way that we now have our own Prime Minister falling into that rhetoric, our own Prime Minister parroting the hateful language of Enoch Powell, of Nigel Farage. He is directly quoting racists. And it is unthinkable. Even 10 years ago, it would have been unthinkable that we would be in this position. But here we are. And I think it is directly linked to what Grace was saying earlier. But I would also mention what the Nova twins referenced, which was that that sort of exclusion of culture, the exclusion of working class children from art, from music. And that's something that the NEU have been tackling as well. We want to see curriculum reform in a really major way. We want children to have access to art, music, drama, dance, and it doesn't matter what their background is, because no child of means doesn't have access to culture. If you take away a child's hope, if you take away any sort of understanding of what their future could look like, then they will resort to extremes and they will look for hope elsewhere. And if you as a government aren't offering it, if you as a state don't offer it, they will find it in really awful places. So what I would say, because I know I need to be really brief here, the trade union movement is incredibly powerful if it is led by its activists. Organize in your workplace, get involved in your trade union and harness the power that you have as a worker, harness the power of the trade union movement, because that is the only place I'm seeing any hope right now. I'm not seeing it in politics. It is in the working class. That's where we need to be organizing. Make sure that you demand curriculum reform in your community, from your local MP, from the government, from Bridget Phillipson. Demand curriculum reform, because the optimism is in education. And at the moment, education is being stolen from the working class. Demand it.
Thanks, Sarah.
I will say one last thing,
Okay.
which I know you're going to say anyway. I'll see you all on Saturday.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Sorry to cut you off there, but we will see you on Saturday and I hope to see everyone else here as well. I'm aware we're running over, but there's still over 500 people on the call and we're going to come to our final speaker. I think that this whole meeting and rally has been so amazing. It's been great to see everyone sharing their comments, suggestions, experiences in the chat. Please do fill out that form to get involved in the campaign. We want the participation of everyone here. This is a campaign that will be built in people's local areas by the people on this call. And as women, we can be leaders in this campaign around the country. So I want to go over to our final speaker, who is Queena. Queena is someone who's been on the front line of fighting against the far right in Wales. She's also a brilliant anti-racist fighter, activist with Stand Up to Racism, and is shamefully being targeted by the state for her solidarity with Palestine. So I'm going to hand over to Queena.
Thank you for having me on this call today. And it's been amazing to hear all of the speakers tonight. I've spent the last couple of weeks countering fascists in the far right in Roos and in Barry, but I've had the honor to do it alongside an amazing counter demonstration of people of all different backgrounds, people from the LGBT community, and those demonstrations have been led by Black and trans women. And I think the breadth and depth of the diversity on our demonstration shows what kind of society we really want, what kind of society we really need if we are to take on the fascists. I think what has been really evident on those demonstrations is, you know, the real intentions of the fascist core, because over the weeks we've seen, you know, their numbers go down, but what we've also seen is a real core of fascists that have been there. They have spouted the most transphobic, Islamophobic, racist rhetoric at us on those demonstrations. And it is very clear that they are not just concerned locals. They are people who are deeply misogynistic and deeply racist, and they have to be challenged. And by going out on the streets and challenging them, that is what we have to do. We cannot allow them, their ideas or their ideology to gain air, but also we have to show that their rhetoric is going to be challenged no matter where they stand. It's so important that we, you know, we see that, you know, we're in a dangerous position right now. We have, you know, a street movement happening across the UK, but those, you know, those in the far right also see, you know, Reform UK, the political wing, the, you know, electoral wing, as their own project. You know, we've seen on demonstrations them holding banners saying, you know, Wales needs reform. But now we see another branch of that in Advanced UK. You know, this new party that has broken off from Reform UK, that is almost to the right of, you know, a far right party. And we see how Tommy Robinson has been flirting with the idea of linking with these. So we are in a really dangerous position with a, you know, a street movement of fascist thugs and, you know, electoral representation. So I think it's really important that we continue to go out to counter them wherever they stand, do the work in our communities to speak to local people, because actually when we've gone out and spoken to the local community, a lot of the local community are completely disgusted with what the far right have been saying and how they've been bringing hate into their community that's been so welcoming to refugees. I think it's really important that we understand that women's safety is rooted in us coming together. It's not rooted in you know, far right figures who say they're so-called protectors, and it is certainly not rooted in the police, who have often been sided with the far right on many of the demos and letting them get away with hell. You know, women's safety is rooted in us coming together as a community and standing for one another. It is so important that we build a mass anti-racist movement that stands with women and girls who face violence from all different from men from all different backgrounds, but also addresses the misogyny within our society that creates this violence. It's important that we build a movement that is also celebrates our differences as a society and brings people together, but also challenges the ideas and the narratives of the far right that use those differences to say that, you know, people do not align with British values, but actually British values are what we as a diverse people say they are. And it's important that that movement is embedded not only in the street movement, but campaigning against Reform UK electorally, but also bringing in culture, like many Nova Twins spoke about, bringing in the culture and celebrating our cultural differences and bringing that together to build a mass movement that not only pushes back the far right, but also socially isolates those fascists that we're seeing, isolates them so their ideas do not have any sway in our society and they're pushed to the fringes, and that they ultimately see that We are the anti-racist majority. We are united in solidarity with refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants. And we're also united in solidarity with all women who face gender-based violence and all those who face gender-based violence. I think it's so important that we continue to come out. I hope to see every one of you on Saturday. I'll be there. At the demonstration on the Women Against the Far Right block with thousands of other women countering the far right and saying that the far right do not represent us or protect us. We are the ones who will represent us. We are the ones who protect us, and we continue to do so in every demonstration, in every meeting, in every Love Music Hate Racism event that we're at. We put forward that we are the ones who protect us, and we must continue to do so as we see the rise of the far right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Queena. Thank you so much to all our brilliant speakers this evening. What a powerful rallying call to end on. We are launching this campaign. This is the start of it, but we want everyone here to get involved. We want to build a movement around the country of women leading the anti-racist movement and pushing back against the far right and all of their racism and their divisive narratives. We are the people, like Queena says, that, you know, we are the people that represent us. We are the people that come together in our unity. We are the people that fight for women's rights and for refugees and the rest of it. And I think that, just to plug again, we'll see everyone on Saturday on that demonstration. That is the start, and it's certainly not the end, because this campaign we want to see all around the country. We want everyone here to get involved, and let's build a movement that can defeat the far right and the racists. So thank you so much. It's been such a powerful evening, and I'm sorry that I ran over a bit, but please do get involved. Watch this space. There's a lot more to come, and see everyone on the streets on Saturday. Thanks, everyone.